So I bought an outboard motor for my John boat that was made for a boat with a steering wheel, console, and controls. I'm going to show you guys how I turned it into a tiller outboard. It really didn't take that much time at all. Just some very basic electrical wiring, a little bit of metal fabrication, but not a lot. You can kind of skirt around that in some ways. But anyways, I'll show you guys what I did and what you guys can do to get this kind of same setup on your boat if you need it. So we got the Suzuki DT40 here. I have the cover off of it so I can show you guys the wiring. But it came with controls just like this for setup on a console boat, like a side console or a center console. So this would plug into the motor itself, and then you got your kill switch, ignition, throttle, all that stuff, front, forwards, reverse. So you don't need that. I guess it's good to have in case you ever sell the motor, but you don't need to do anything with that. And this is a 2-stroke carbureted motor. So on the back here, you have the forward, reverse. You got your carb up here. You got your ignition control modules here, and your coils here. So what I will start off with is the kill switch. It's very simple. All you're gonna do is take one of your, this is a ground that I use obviously here, go from one of your coils, the ground wires from the coil, and splice it so you can run another wire off of it, and that's going to go all the way up here, and one wire is going to connect to a switch. It's a simple on-off switch that I bought off Amazon. I think I got like a 10-pack of them for like $5 or something. And then you're going to have the other wire, and that wire is going to run to ground. So I got it grounded right here. This wire goes, this is just some tape to keep the wires together. The ground wire is going to go from ground, and then it's going to connect to the other side of this switch. And I know you're thinking, well, how does that work? This is ground to ground. But obviously this, when the motor's running, this has power running through it. And basically what it does is when the coil is off, this wire is dead. It doesn't do anything. But as soon as you turn it on, it allows the current to run from the coil to the switch and then to this ground. So as soon as you switch it on, it diverts power from the coil and it grounds it out here. And that's how the kill switch works. Very simple. So one more time. Add an extra wire to one of your coil wires. I'm pretty sure either coil wire would work, but I use the ground. Extra wire from coil to switch, and from switch to ground. That's for your kill switch. Now, for your starter switch, if you're not going to want to use pull start does work on this, but it's a 40 horsepower, that's a pretty heavy pull. This motor came with a starter and the solenoid, so it was just a simple matter of hooking it all up. And the way I did that was bought a car battery that's up there, hooked it up, ground positive, and the positive from the battery goes right to the positive post on the solenoid. Goes around right here and goes in right there. The ground for the battery can just pretty much ground anywhere on the motor itself. And then next thing you're going to have to do is put a switch in for the starter. And what you're going to do for that is run another wire from that same positive post, and you're gonna wire it to one side of a push button switch. You don't have to use a push button switch, you can use an on-off switch, but this is good because you press it till it starts and then you release it, and it doesn't keep the starter going. So again, battery cable to positive solenoid, another wire from that same positive solenoid to a switch, and then on the other terminal for that switch, you are going to ground it back to the solenoid over there. So positive from solenoid to one terminal, negative wire to negative terminal back on the solenoid, and that will allow you to activate the starter. And as soon as you let go, if you use a push button starter like this, as soon as you let go, it'll turn the motor off. The next part of the conversion was putting a tiller handle on it. And this is kind of redneck, ghetto, sketchy, whatever you want to call it. But all I did was buy a handle or a handle throttle off of Amazon, and it's made for like an 80cc dirt bike. I took it up to Home Depot with me, and I measured. I think it was the 3/4 inch tubing is what worked perfectly. And it's very simple. Once you buy these, it's kind of self-explanatory how it goes on. But basically, you put the throttle cable in there, you put the two pieces on this, and then you mash them together, put the bolts in, and this bolt right here in the middle is actually an anchor bolt, so that one's drilled through this handle just to kind of keep it in place. And for mounting this tube, if you guys can see down here, what I did was I cut the tube in half, like in the middle of the tube, and I cut that top portion off about 2 inches back, and drilled through it, and just used the old steering linkage holes to put bolts through the handle. And yeah, I did reinforce it because it gets bent a lot, because I made it so long that you can't actually turn the motor upwards without it hitting something. So I did actually go ahead and weld reinforce it, but that's not necessary. If you make it short enough, the tiller handle won't hit on anything, and you won't have to reinforce it. And so for the throttle linkage, it goes all the way back here. This is the throttle right here. And what I did was I put it in neutral, and I measured where it idled at. So if I move this, you can see that that's revving the engine, and it's at full idle when it's back here. So I got a spring from Home Depot made for a door frame, and I basically had someone hold this screw here, this bolt, and I measured how much tension this spring would take just by trial and error, where this bolt would have to be to give this spring enough tension to hold it back in idle. And once I found that location, I drilled through with a nut on either side, and that held it in place there. And this stays in place when you're going full speed or half speed. It doesn't move, so this is great. And you can see when I rev the throttle, it moves how it should. And that is a pretty stiff throttle, but it works. Again, this is a setup to get you on your feet and get you out there on the water. It's maybe not a long-term plan, but it definitely works for me. I have no issues with this setup. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how it's like when it runs. Alright, got the cover back on, got the switch drilled through, and that nut actually secures it on there from the outside, so that's nice. On is run, off is kill. Go ahead, press the button. And that's it. Pretty simple setup. It works really good.